Oh, oh, wow. What's happening, everybody? It's your boy Leo with the bird section, and oh, um, oh Lord, just give me a second because you know, I, uh, uh, I, I just got off of a live. I just did a live, a live with Game Time Brian. Shout out to Game Time Brian. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to his chat. But we just got finished doing a roundtable discussion, call it whatever, call in show with all of the channel members and stuff. And he had a special guest, which was in fact Terrence Parsons. And I just finished listening to for a hour, couple hours now. Listening to Terrence Parsons, and you know if you kind of weed through what everyone else was saying, because if you guys have been following me, and and you follow Game Time Brian, and you follow Mark Holmes, you know that as an Eagles fan I am continuously and constantly having to contend with the mass delusion of the Dallas Cowboy fans. And it I really, first of all, shout out to Terrence Parsons. And if you haven't already, do like and subscribe to his channel as well. I appreciate him coming on and talking to all of us, including the few Eagle fans that was there, like Rob A and Eagles Drew and myself. And it was really dope getting to talk to him and hear from the horse's mouth on a number of things. But I was listening. I appreciate having y'all know how I am. I appreciate having an intellectual conversation with any Dallas Cowboy fan whenever the opportunity presents itself. And for the most part, yeah, Drew. That's what I'm. That's what this. That's what I'm. I was so messed up. Drew. I was so messed up. I had to come on. I had to come on live and actually talk about this because I was not prepared for what it was that I heard, and the way that he was saying it. Well, you know what I wasn't prepared for? I wasn't prepared to hear how the delusion that is the Cowboys fan base and the things and their rationale and why they say the things that they say. That was what I was not prepared for when listening to Terrence Parsons. I was like he presents all these facts and his data and everything like that, and then he'll turn around and make a delusional type of statement, and it's like, oh, so this is real, so you're really like this, you know um you know and I get why Lord Brunson has such a hard time with him. I get it. And it mostly is that I thought, see, normally what ends up happening, right? Here's what I was thinking, right? Because of where him and Micah grew up, I assumed that they were either growing up either Pittsburgh Steeler fans or Philadelphia Eagles fans. It was one or the other. And I used to make fun because I used to think, oh, well, Micah's going to say what he's going to say because he's a company man. And thank you, CZ. I thought he was going to, I thought he was a company man. And as a company man, you're not going to say anything disparaging about your team. And I have always applauded the fact that how much he's defended his team, how much he's defended Dak, how much he's defended, and Terrence did acknowledge the fact that, you can see based off of the body language, the frustration that Michael may or may not have or may have because, there's all this effort on his part to do what he has to do, but it's never matched entirely by the defense as a whole or the team as a whole. And so, and I didn't want to put him in a compromising position, to say to put his brother in a compromising position to say something that would be, newsworthy and all that other stuff. And and so what normally happens though, and it's been my experience, and is that normally when a player gets drafted and they're playing for a team, you know, um, a lot of times the members of that family, uh, Leo, I give him a pass because he is too close to the Dallas culture. Okay, got you, CZ. But here's the thing. Normally what happens is when a player gets drafted, right? That that player's family, a lot of members of that family will normally change their allegiance to the team that that player was drafted to. They all of a sudden are now fans of that team, and will defend that team based on their family members' participation or reliability for that squad. So that's what I always assumed Terrence was. He was just, if Michael went to the Commanders, or if he played for the Eagles, then Terrence would be an Eagles fan, and he would have all these numbers and his data. But then actually listening to him talk, it was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this dude is for real a Dallas Cowboy fan. I mean, like he was like, oh, and I know a lot of people who are Cowboy fans that are from Pennsylvania. I just didn't expect that to be the truth when it came to Terrence Parsons. You know, I really didn't. But Jesus, listening to him and listening to the things that he was saying, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, yo, my man, at a certain point in this, let me tell you how crazy it is and how messed up. I can't even get like the points in order. I'm only going off of things that I remember from, because I'm still. It's only been like 5 minutes since I was on a few minutes since we were on the call or what have you. So I'm still processing it all. You know, but and maybe I should have, you know, conventional wisdom would have said, give yourself time to process what you just heard, and then, go ahead and go live. But I wanted you all to catch this immediate reaction to having been on this show, because it was, again, part of it was difficult because you had a lot of people fighting for the mic to get a chance to talk to them and to ask them questions. So, and I ain't mad at that. I've been a part of that before. Again, shout out to Eugene Monroe for his participation in another call-in show. But man, at a certain point, this is how bad it was. At a certain point, right, in this roundtable discussion, at a certain point, Terrence Parsons said, "Yeah, and Miles Sanders is going to be that guy." Huh? Miles Sanders? You said Miles Sanders? And I asked him again, you said Miles Sanders? He said, yeah, oh, Miles Sanders. And I'm like, and the thing about it is that what really messed me up about that was he said it with a straight face. He threw Miles Sanders out in a threatening manner. And I mean, when I mean threatening manner, meaning like he was gonna, like all this barking that Miles Sanders has been doing as of late, or supposedly, because they say he didn't say it, but there's all this talk about Like, you really think that Miles Sanders is going to be a very real factor? And he's convinced. He said Jadon Blue too. And I did ask him, I said, hey, I know the answer can change because it's still preseason and everything, but what do you think the Cowboys record is going to be? And he said 11 wins. Really? Yeah. And he was dead ass serious. You know, I Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones have got that fan base all screwed up. I mean, they are all screwed up. For those of you who are investors and everything like that, my suggestion would be go look at taking out some stock in Best Buy and some stock in some of these TV manufacturers like Sony and all that stuff, because the Cowboys fan base is going to be bussing their flat screen TVs this year. A lot of flat screen TVs are going to be sold because people will be punching them, shooting them, throwing chairs at them, ripping them out of walls, because Jerry has got you guys, and I'm talking to the Dallas Cowboys fan base in whole. Jerry has got y'all so screwed up that he set y'all up to, like, really, for the biggest fall. This is like, and I wonder, like, what is this going to look like? Like, this is, and here's the thing. I wonder with excitement. I promised a bunch of people who are part of the Dallas Cowboys fan base that when the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl, and I said this last year, that I was going to be insufferable. I have got so much content. I have so much uh 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 I have so much to use to make myself insufferable that I am literally going to be insufferable for the next couple of years. And that and the ability to do that, to be able to torment this fan base, that content, that ability to do that is going to renew itself year after year after year. Me too, Leo. Me too. Yeah, retro. Like I'm. Uh, you you all are really. Thanks, bro. You know what I'm saying? You did too, man. Like look, Drew. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, bro. You all are really, 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 really playing with fire. Like, y'all must like this. You all are suffering from mass post-traumatic stress disorder. And at this point, because you all bought in so much to things being different, I couldn't sit back and listen to the madness. Drew, brother, listen. I'm I'm thrown. I am genuinely thrown. You know, hey, I just do my thing, no pun intended. Yeah, yeah. li- uh, mm, 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 mm. I used to think that I think that the fact that, I used to think Mark was an unreasonable, somewhat an unreasonable Cowboy fan because of the things that he says. Because if you go back, and the best part about some of these channels is that you can go back a year or two, like Mark. You can go back and look at, you know, the videos and the live shows that he's done around this time, a few years ago or a year ago. You could go back and look at where he was or what they were thinking emotionally when they lost these playoffs and stuff like that. And it is in those moments, in those very raw emotional moments, is when the real truth actually comes out. When you hear them say things, it's when time goes from when they get further and further away from the loss, is when the delusion starts to take back over. They have these breakthroughs. It's there's like a very minute, finite time period where from the time that they lost to when the delusion kicks back in that time in between, that is really when they are at their most reasonableness, because they're so low about things, that they actually take a out of the bubble look at the team. And then you hear what they say about Dak and everything like that, and then as the delusion starts to kick back in again, and I don't know how that happens, it's like, man, like, Jerry and Stephen Jones have groomed this fan base for the victim role, you know what I'm saying, for at least the last 30 years. They have been groomed, like someone who, like how someone who grooms a young person when they're about, trying to get in their head and make them think that they can't live without them and all this other stuff. That's where they are right now. It's amazing. It is amazing. See, here's the thing. You know, when 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 we lose, when the one of the things that you can always say, a characteristic of a Philadelphia Eagles fan is one of our characteristics from the fan base is what makes us hard to play. What makes it hard to play in Philadelphia is the fact that there is no outside fan base who's going to say anything worse about the team when they're playing bad than the actual fan base. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why when you hear a Giants fan or a Cowboys fan or a Commanders fan say disparaging things about the Philadelphia Eagles, they don't ever say anything that we ourselves have not said about the team. You never hear and though we come back every year, you know what I'm saying, we we don't it's hard to win us over as a fan base. When we're losing, we're losing. We're not happy. Jesse, yeah, you know what? Jesse? That is, I'm believing you. Yes, you are in the weeds. You are really in the weeds. I get it. And listening to what we heard tonight from Terrence Parsons, you probably are in the best place possible because I think that I don't think that I don't think we're the only team in the division that's going to smash them. I think the Giants are going to smash the Cowboys as well. I really do. I just week 2, I think Dallas is going to get that ass smacked. It's just, but listening to Terrence Parsons and listening to what he was saying and his rationale behind it, I said to him, "You guys are like Lucy. Y'all keep moving the ball." You know, here's what was one of the things that was really telling, and what threw me in the mindset that okay, like you really are a true Cowboys fan because you're just as delusional. Is I asked Terrence Parson, I said, well, what do you need? What kind of throw? What do you need to see Jalen do in order for him to be considered elite? Okay. Now, here's the thing. Number one, every time you ask him questions along those lines or what have you, his fail safe, his fallback is, you ever played the game? Have you ever played the game? Okay. And so because he's played the game, that seems to that makes him feel like he knows as much as anybody else or anybody who hasn't played the game. You know, yet he says the things that he says about the Dallas Cowboys, and then you go, all right, I don't think he's that. I like it undermines the fact that he once played the game. But when I asked him, what do you need to see Jalen do, or what type of throw? You know what he said? He said, I need to see Jalen Hurts have a Lamar Jackson type of season. A Lamar Jackson type of season. That's what he needs to say. See. Now, to his credit, he did not say that Jalen Hurts wasn't a good quarterback. He did make it a point to drive. He did try to drive home the point that he wasn't actually knocking Jalen Hurts. He was evaluating Jalen Hurts' play as a quarterback the way he sees fit. And what he sees as being a elite quarterback is to have a Lamar Jackson type of season. 4,000 yards throwing, 40 touchdowns or something like that or what have you. And the first thing I thought was, but having a 4,000 yard, passing and all those yards running and throwing hasn't won Lamar Jackson a Super Bowl. So, based off of the way Terrence Parsons is talking, it's more important to see, in order to be called an elite quarterback, you have to have individual stats that are astronomical that end with no Super Bowl. And therein lies my issue when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys fan base. Like, it is, like, they all seem to think you could just throw any quarterback in that behind Philadelphia's front line, offensive line, and they're going to win 4 or 5. So if Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and whoever else that he holds in a higher regard than Jalen Hurts, if you put them behind that offensive line, then they're going to win multiple Super Bowls or go to multiple Super Bowls. You mean like the multiple Super Bowls that Jalen Hurts has gone to? You think that if you throw Joe Burrow behind that offensive line, that he's going to win a Super Bowl? Josh Allen? Are you okay? Listen, that they say the Super Bowl tax is heavy because you lose players, right? But what really makes it heavy, in my opinion, is when you win the Super Bowl with the team that Jalen Hurts has, the tax is also it also means that you get taxed on the caliber of player you're perceived to be. You know, I you know, last year you could see Dak on the sidelines, and this is before he got hurt. He was having a horrible year before he even got hurt. Okay. But you could see him on the sideline telling everybody, telling someone, we fucking suck. You know what I'm saying? And that was including him. He got pulled from the game. I I'm sorry, man. If like, first of all, and Dirty, listen, bro. Peace to Dirty Sanchez. You know what, Dirty Sanchez, man, I love when you come on and the things that you say, because it's funny as hell. You a little off, but it's still funny as hell. If you throw Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or any other quarterback behind that offensive on the Eagles team, this is not the team that would be built for them. This team is built for Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts only. Okay. It was Jalen Hurts who initiated the calls to get AJ Brown. Okay. Jalen Hurts facilitated that. You know what I'm saying? You have very good players who want to come to Philadelphia because of Jalen Hurts and the way that team is built. Okay. We don't know what this team would look like because they would not build this team the same way. Now, am I saying they wouldn't go out and get quality players and all that other stuff? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that this would not be the same team. Okay. Secondly, and I keep pushing this narrative, you do not know what Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or any of these other quarterbacks would be like if they had a different offensive the offensive coordinator every year. I don't think there's nothing about them that says to me that they would be able to quickly pick up any offensive coordinator system and run it like they did. Um, he was a good guess. Yes, I did. They wouldn't be able to run it like they did. You know what I'm saying? So I am genuinely going to enjoy this season. I am. I really am. I'm going to have a good time going through this season. And I told Terrence to tap in with me throughout the course of the season because I would love to to get his take on it all and see what he says. The other thing too is no, bro. It if it's a blow up doll, it's coming home to. Oh God, Jesse, I know, but I don't have room for anything. I got 12 by. Yeah, dirty. You got issues, bro. You know what I'm saying? Um, but I'm um I'm so thrown right now, man. Like, guys, I'm telling y'all, this was the last thing that I was expecting to. I get why he has a problem with Lord Brunson. I get why Lord Brunson has a problem with him. I really do. I get it. I heard it. I've experienced it. Okay, I experienced it for myself, and I want to say that what Lord Brunson has to say is not without merit. I do think that Game Time Brian is a little hard on Lord Brunson when he calls him toxic, but then again, at the same time, he's a Cowboys fan, so I can understand how, as a Cowboys fan, one would think that Lord Brunson is toxic. Because at the end of the day, is Jesse Laura Brunson is not brutal. He's brutally honest. That's what he is. You know what I'm saying? You know, hey, Jesse. Laura Brunson would make a Laura. You know what Laura Brunson? I'll tell you exactly what Laura Brunson would be. You ready? And Jesse, I don't want you to leave the chat. I want you to put it in the chat. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Okay. But you know what I think, Laura Brunson, you know why why people have a hard time, particularly people like Terrence Parson have a hard time with Laura Brunson? Because Laura Brunson would probably be the senior drill sergeant or the command sergeant major. That scary motherfucker who is who is not just brutally honest, but ultra brutally honest, who just who will punch you in the face with his verbal attacks, but nothing about what he's saying would be untrue. Tell me I'm wrong, Jesse. Tell me I'm wrong. And that's the problem that I think that a lot of people have. He speaks to her truth, Leo. Lord Brunson keeps it 1,000. Yes, Drew. I think that the problem that people like Terrence Parson has with Lord Brunson is the same problem that people would have if he was a drill sergeant. Okay, he is he is totally he's brutally honest, just like a drill sergeant, and you know how scary those guys can be. And when I hear people say when I hear things being said like he's toxic and everything like that, no, that's not toxic. That's just the NCO in him coming out. And us non-commissioned officers, we ain't got time for your feelings. So blind men who don't he speaks the truth, the blind men who don't want to see. Yep. Yeah, Jesse, yeah. He's a drill sergeant. You know what I'm saying? And drill sergeants are the actual description that a lot of people that like Game Time would use to say he's toxic, but it's really just no, it's just hard truth. No filter, and now I understand for myself, I don't think Terrence Parsons would do very well in the military. I really don't. I don't think he could handle that. And so uh, uh man, yeah, Jesse, I know you. Yeah, that's why I said, Jesse, put it in the chat. Tell me if I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying? I now understand me. Understand me. I now understand why Game Time would say the things that he says, and why Terrence Parsons would react to someone like Laura Brunson, because Laura Brunson is a former uh, uh, either non-commissioned officer or junior NCO in the United States military, and also someone like ourselves who has seen war, who's been down range and know what that life is like. So, it's It's yeah. Um, I get why, someone like Terrence Parsons would struggle with someone like him. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing, I do think that Terrence Parsons could be moldable. He just has to want it. Leo, he'd be real scary Terry again, Drill. Yup. That's so true. That's so true. So I think that's where I think I've figured it out. I think I've realized, like, I just don't think, and you know what? I don't think that Laura Brunson even realizes that. I don't think Laura Brunson realizes how intently scary he is, for what reason. And the reason being is because in his commentary, especially when someone wants to get confrontational, you know, he comes across like a non-commissioned officer, you know what I'm saying? Which is probably another reason why I don't have a problem with what he says and the way he says it, you know what I'm saying? And why someone like me who happens to fall on the same side as him in terms of my fandom, but also can understand, who also falls on the same side of him as someone who once served in the United States Army and has been downrange like he has. The one thing we don't have time for is your fucking feelings. Fuck your feelings. It's about the mission. Let's get the mission. And what is the mission? And the thing about it is that when you hear someone like Jalen Hurts, who actually talks and sounds like an officer, okay? Let's keep the main thing the main thing. It's all about the mission. Has he made mistakes? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you could be an elite quarterback if you have not made a mistake a time or two, or three or four, or 10 or 20. Okay. You have to make those mistakes. You know what I'm saying? It's all trial by fire. It's how you respond and come back, and so, you know, and when you talk about being a leader of men, and understand, Jesse, as Leo, my drill to this day, 35 years later, still scares me. Me too. Me too. Me too. I have had dreams where I could have swore I heard Joe Sergeant Watson scream at me and wake me up. Okay, I could hear Drill Sergeant Tinoco talking shit. You know what I'm saying? It's still, and if you have never served, I don't expect you to understand. I don't if you've never served, I do not expect you to understand from what place Jesse Montanez is coming from when he says that 35 years later, his the thought of his drill sergeant's voice still scares him. I know what he is talking about, and he is 1,000,000% correct. Okay. You can tell. Okay. You can tell. Jalen Hurts sounds like someone who just went through OCS and probably has some real hard ass damn drill sergeants in OCS, and is now in the regular army. You know what I'm saying? Whereas someone like Laura Brunson sounds like a fucking command sergeant major. Scary. Okay. And understand something. Like, my reference point. Check this out, y'all. When I was stationed at Fort Bragg, you know who my command sergeant major was at Fort Bragg? I had Command Sergeant Major Jordan. I had Michael Jordan's brother. Michael Jordan's older brother was my sergeant major at Fort Bragg. Okay. And Sergeant Major Jordan was probably one of the scariest sergeant majors I've ever had, to include Sergeant Major Vester, um, Sergeant Major Pitts. I had Sergeant Major Pitts as a platoon sergeant, okay? So again, that is, I think that's the problem. And I think that Laura Brunson actually might want to, Leo, but I'd go into combat with him. Exactly. Exactly. Jalen Hurts is a real leader of men. Okay, I would go to battle for him too. And if you listen to the way his teammates talk and everything like that, clearly it sounds like a military unit. Jalen Hurts is the platoon captain. Okay, you know what, he's the battalion commander. Okay, and then you have uh you have Nick Sirianni is the brigade commander. Okay, and then you have uh you know Kevin Patullo, who's the XO. And then you have uh Devontae, you have Saquon, you have AJ, and you have Dallas, and you have Lane Johnson. Those are your platoon sergeants, okay? And then you got all the other players who just follow what the mission is. You know what I'm saying? And keep and adopt what it is. And what it is keeping the main thing the main thing. We only care about winning, whatever it takes to win. If it means that we have to throw the ball only 22 times and run it more in order to win the game, then damn it, if that's what's going to complete the mission, that's exactly what we're going to do. Okay? If that's what we have to do, whatever it is. So if it means that he has to sacrifice personal glory in order to get the win, then that's what they're going to do. You listen to these Cowboy fans, and that's not what they're going to do. Okay? You know what they want? And I realize this. If you're military, that's right, Jesse. If you realize, if you think about it, hold on, CZ Leo, I love stories from military members. My stepdad's whole family was in the military and love hearing stories from World War II to the Cold War sub stories. Some of these stories are insane. Dirty Sanchez says, well, I gotta totally agree with you on that. Do whatever it takes to win. Yes. But when you listen to some of these Cowboy fans, like last week I was talking with Game Time, and he said, I would like to see, just for personal, for shits and giggles, wouldn't you want to get a lot of numbers and all this other stuff just for personal reason, individual stats? And I'm like, hell no. If it means that we ain't gonna win, no, I don't give a damn about all that. So I think the difference between a Dallas Cowboys fan and a Philadelphia Eagles fan is Dallas Cowboy fans are more in love and in tune to personal glory than they are about team glory. And somehow or another have figured out a way, and I think this is because of Jerry Jones. I think that they figured out a way to intertwine the two and got them, and now are confused. Leo starts with culture. The Eagles have a championship culture place. Dallas is resting on 30 years ago. The players and fan base can't relate. Uh, Jesse Munson, CZ, I was in combat. My uncle was too, and my dad, all infantry soldiers. Yup. And and you know what? And I want to point that out too, Jesse too, because if I'm not mistaken, I think because I'm just saying, I've heard Lord Brunson say he's been on patrol and had to kick in doors. So I'm thinking that Lord Brunson was probably an 11 Bravo, and if he in fact was an 11 Bravo, and for those of you who don't know, an 11 Bravo means he was an infantryman. If he in fact was an 11 Bravo, no fucking wonder Terrence Parsons has a hard time with him. No fucking wonder somebody like Game Time Brian would think that he's toxic. You know what I'm saying? Because in those kinds of environments, and I don't care if you have family members who've been in those kinds of environments. I've actually lived that environment. I've been in those environments. I know what that whole environment is like. That's exactly what it is. It explains everything. Salute to all the military veterans. My son is a Navy veteran. Go talk to your son, Drew. Ask him, have him watch this and listen to what I just said, and ask him if he agrees or not. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just telling you, fellas. Like I think just going through it. I'm glad I didn't wait, but going through this and hearing me say all this stuff, Leo, that's not toxic. It's how to survive. Again, Jesse, if you think about the way you listen to a lot of these Cowboy fans talk, and the way, matter of fact, perfect example, listen to Randy McIntyre. He gets sick and tired of all this blah, 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 blah from other members of the Dallas Cowboy fan base. and he wants to get into playing football. Like, damn all that, let's do this. That sounds like somebody who was downrange, who's been downrange a time or two. Okay, so just I man, this was I had to go, I had to hear myself say all this stuff out loud to try to finally figure it out. And I think I figured it out why, why people like Game Time and Terrence Parsons and members of the Dallas Cowboys fan base may have a hard time with Lord Brunson. It's because he is brutally honest in the ways of like a former drill sergeant. I wouldn't be surprised. I've never met Lord Brunson. I've never spoken to him. I've never really had any interaction outside of a question or two on his live chats or what have you. But so I don't know if it's true or not, but I suspect that Lord Brunson is probably a former non-commissioned officer or junior NCO. Seriously, I would not be surprised. And secondly, I think that he actually may have been an 11 Bravo or someone in artillery. So one of them, like he sounded like a grunt. Okay, he talks just like a grunt. You understand what I'm saying? That whole uh uh s- iron sharpens iron and all that stuff or whatever. For those of you who have never served in the army, and I'm just specifically talking about the army, if you have never served in the army, the type of units that I am talking about, at Leo, I saw it after hearing Terrence and hearing Brunson roast him. I laughed. Yeah, but Jesse, whore, yeah, Jesse, am I wrong? Do you think that it's a very real possibility that Laura Brunson might have been an 11 Bravo and a former non-commissioned NCO or junior NCO? Because that's how he talk. I had to go through this to figure it out. Like what is the problem? Like what is it that he is saying? Because he like I don't hear the lie. You know what I'm saying? And like, damn, now I'm like, yeah, damn. Because even when he's wrong, he has been willing to stand tall and just accept it and take the crow, just like I am. Like I've told, Mark Holmes that I would like if I'm wrong about the Philadelphia Eagles repeating and winning the Super Bowl again, that I had no problems with presenting myself to Mark Holmes's channel and even the game times. I'm willing to go on game times or any other person in divisions to say you know to eat that crow. I'm willing because you know why we live, and Jesse, you know this, we live by what we call the Army core values, which is loyalty, duty, respect, honor, integrity, and personal courage. That is something that we all display in one form or another, one of those attributes, what I'm saying, one of those core Army values, we all display it at least once every day of our lives. They beat that shit into us. Leo, LB has mentioned that he has seen live combat action. Bro, only a few people can understand what that even feels like. And that's Drew, that's why I'm saying, because I'm drawing back off of memory, and I remember hearing him say things like, oh, when you was doing that, I was kicking in doors and da 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 da. Okay, the only people that be doing that type of shit be 11 Bravos and fucking artillery dude. No, but those dudes that whose jobs it is. I was a signal guy, you know what I'm saying? And so, I've always been attached to those type of units for a very short period of time, only because I had a mission within their mission. You know what I'm saying? So I've gone on those patrols before, only because that patrol may have covered an area in which we were trying to line up an LOS, and which is a line of sight, a shot, a microwave shot, and I would need to be doing a recce. So I would need to be, I would join those, I would attach to those infantry units, who would be going on those patrols, so that I would participate in the patrol, yeah, but my mission was to try to identify possible obstructions and stuff like that that would interfere with the shot. And I've done that, I've done the helicopter flights and all that stuff, and so I've seen live fire. I've actually seen actual combat. And so these things that I'm speaking from personal experience and everything like that. But I'm again, as I sit here and think about it, and after listening to Terrence Parsons, I realized the problem with Lord Brunson, and this is probably what a lot of people who are Lord Brunson haters are don't understand, and why they might think that he's toxic and everything, is because he's probably a non-commissioned officer and probably a fucking grunt. That's probably the reason. And there's only one way they know how to talk. There's only one way they know how to tell a story, and it is their way. So, and it's very, 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 very direct, and it's very, very blunt. It is very, very ugly. But here's the thing: it is very, very true. So with that, I just want to say, thank you to everyone who's actually served in the United States military. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Those of you within my thanks, Leo, and chat for your service. My honor, retro. And also, please go on to Terrence Parsons uh 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 his YouTube channel too. Like and subscribe. You know what I'm saying? I told Terrence, hey, get at me. I want to continue talking to you throughout the course of the season if possible. He says he's coming up for week 1, so hopefully I'll be able to catch up with him then, or maybe even beforehand or so. So, again, yeah, thanks, Drew. I'm just I I get it now. I get it. I think I've cracked the code. I really think I've cracked the code to what everyone outside of the Eagles fan base issue may be with Lord Brunson, and that is he's probably a former NCO and maybe even being a 11 Bravo, and if that and that's why some may misinterpret his rationale as being toxic, and can't handle the way. And you know what, like when you listen to when they do the Super Friends and stuff like that, Louis T can't handle them. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, they think it's funny and everything like that. Now I'm starting to realize, like, that's it, that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? So if you can, make sure you get this shout out. You know what, yeah, Jesse, I want to try to. I will. I'll definitely try that. But you know what? Share this. For all y'all. Like for all y'all who are followers of Lord Brunson, let him know that Leo cracked the code. Leo Bridgewater cracked the code and figured out what the problem is. And now that like it's really starting to like dawn on me. Like that's probably like that's what he has to do. I think Lord Brunson ought to do a live or something like that and primarily talk about, just for a hot second or a good minute, talk about his military service and the things in the way, because you can tell, now that I think about it, you can tell that dude was probably a 11 Bravo. Yeah, at least E5 or above. You know what, E4 or above. But I wouldn't be surprised if if he was an NCO. But he definitely had to. He has to be. It's got to be. So when if y'all get a chance, get on his live next time y'all see him go live or whatever, and let him know, hey, Leo Bridgewater cracked the code. He figured out why everybody got a problem with you. Why Terrence Parsons has a problem with you. Why Game Time Brian might have thinks you're toxic, because you're an 11 Bravo, and they don't understand what that means. They don't understand, like, those type of people, like and again, I was a 31 Papa, okay, or 25 Papa, and with a Sierra designator. So I dealt with microwave and satellite communications, but I'm starting to realize, like, holy shit, what I'm saying? That's the problem. They don't understand. People like that do very, very well with confrontation. Okay. when we have to deal with confrontation, we are really, really good. Our snapbacks are really, really good. Our snapbacks are really, really harsh. Okay. It's just the way, it's just the environment in which you spend a massive amount of time in. And when you have gone down range, you definitely can tell for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, you definitely can tell he has in fact kicked in a door or two and has been down range and has seen some action, because only people who have done that talk like he do. Just dawned on me. Yup, that's what's been dawned. Like, you could definitely tell. You could definitely tell he's probably got at least minimum two, maybe even three at minimum deployments under his belt. And if that's the case, yeah, you Cowboy fans, y'all don't want that smoke. Jesse, wait a minute. E6. Oh, Staff Sergeant. Oh, Roger that, Big Sar. I just saw that, Jesse. You were E6. Roger that, Staff Sergeant. Who? Understood, Sar. Understood. You know what I'm saying? I was an E5, so understood. Roger that. You know what I'm saying? Going to PLDC and all that shit. Yup. You know what I'm saying? I went to airborne school. That's how I tore up my knee and everything like that. So yeah, like I get it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why when you hear a person say, "Well, have you ever played football before?" And it's like, who cares? It's not bombs. I don't care. It's not bombs. You're never going to see him raise his heart rate up that high and get as like what you heard when Terrence Parsons started screaming and yelling at a certain point, getting real, animated at some points or whatever. It does not matter. It's not bombs. Okay. We have been trained to be able to remain functional in a state of chaos. That's the secret to basic training in all of the military services. I realized a long time ago that when you're in basic training, see, the drill sergeants never stop screaming. Okay. At a certain point, though, it doesn't sound like screaming. At a certain point, they scream day one to the day you graduate basic training. Them drill sergeants are always screaming at you. Okay, at a high pitch rate and are going at you hard or in your face like this. They don't even give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. They're always like that. But after a certain amount of time, it doesn't sound like screaming. And that's what it is. They got to beat that civilian out of you and build you up as a soldier so that in a state of chaos, you can still remain functional. That's the problem. And when you have people who can get themselves in a tizzy over facts and figures about, what it means to be in the and remaining functional, there you go. As soon as you got off the cattle car, you know what? Let me tell this quick story, right? So Jesse, I did basic training at Fort Benning. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, Fort Benning is actually um home of the infantry, 3rd Infantry Division, 3rd ID. Okay. Um, and so what they do is they bring you in on these buses and you spend a week in reception. And in reception, that's when you're getting your paperwork done and you're getting your shots and you're getting all this stuff done. And then they put you on these cattle cars to send you to your unit. Okay. The moment you pull up to the front of your unit, okay, the moment you pull up to the front, they call it the shark tank because you'll have about 50 drill sergeants surround these cattle cars, okay, and they start banging on the side of the cattle cars. Get your ass off this bus. Get off. Da da. Okay. Um, okay, so I was Bravo 347, Jesse, on Sand Hill. So I remember, looking at the drill sergeants and wondering what in the hell is this? And Jesse's right. From the moment you pull up, it's screaming all day, every day. Okay. The only time that I heard my drill sergeant talk to me like a human being was after we had graduated and we were in that period of getting ready to go to we were getting ready to go to what is called AIT, Advanced Individual Training. And I remember that was the first time I heard my drill sergeant talk with a monotone voice. And he looked at us and said, it was only a few of us, Echo, Eagle, Sand Hill. We were Wolfpack. Um, and I remember my drill sergeant said, y'all gonna be all right. Y'all gonna be all right. Cause he knew that we were going to deploy. He knew, okay? He knew we were going to deploy because, 9/11 had just happened, you know what I'm saying? And so he knew what we were headed towards. And I remember them telling us, because I went in and right after 9/11, November of 2001. And I remember like they were especially tough on us because peacetime was over, we were going to war. And they made it their mission to make sure that we were going to be proficient, that we were going to be ministers of death praying for war. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be damned if they ain't whoop our asses. We got our asses kicked every day. But you know what though? I am forever grateful for that hard training. I prefer it, I get why you hear people say the things that they say, like when Jesse Montanez says 30 something years later, I still hear my drill sergeant's voice in my head and I get scared. You goddamn right. Me too. I've been out of the military almost 20 years now, and I still hear Drill Sergeant Watson. I still hear Drill Sergeant Tinoco. I still I consider myself closer to a lot of my buddies that I served, that I went down range with, that I served with. I consider them, as much family as those who I'm related to by blood. Okay. And only those who have ever served would understand what that means. It just means that, through a shared traumatic event, we're always going to be connected. And for some of us, some of those people that we're forever connected to, just ain't right in the head. And you know why, how they got there. So with that, I'm knocking on an hour and being on this. That's just, I like I said, talking to Terrence Parsons and listening to these Dallas Cowboy fans and everything like that. Damn, you know what I'm saying? I think I've cracked the code to what's really the underlying issue between Laura Brunson and why Terrence Parsons has a hard time with them, and why Game Time Bryant may think he's toxic. It's because you're talking to an 11 Bravo who I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that he might be an 11 Bravo, or at least a former non-commissioned officer. And those people are that's especially those 11 Bravos, they are literally a different breed. Okay. They are so hard charging and so tough that you have signal guys like me who be like, because I like, well, like and they're because that's tough. So I think I've cracked the code, y'all. I'll Leo, I'm going to send you some funny videos from a former Army drill sergeant. He is hilarious. Okay, yeah, send them to me, man. But yeah, like if you and Drew, if you look at him, if this guy's as funny as you think he is, then ask yourself, does he sound like Laura Brunson when he talks? Because I bet you he probably does. You know what I'm saying? So again, and then it'll help you understand why Game Time thinks he might be toxic, and why Terrence Parsons and other Cowboys might think that we fat, happy, and dumb. Now, you ain't never lied, Jesse. We ain't never look, this right here. You see this right here? You see this beard and all this other stuff? This is that thing I said that I was always going to have when I got out of the military. You know what I'm saying? Total. Okay, so yeah, I'm right. Okay. Yeah, that's probably why, Drew, everybody. So this was my this beard and all this right here is was my way of This was my in the face of my drill sergeants, because if they saw this, what I'm saying, I'm dead. Okay, I'm not fucked up. I'm dead. Okay, so uh that being said, man, you guys have a good night. I'll see y'all tomorrow, because I'm gonna go live again and talk about this some more after I've processed it a little bit better and got my thoughts. But I need to hear myself say it out loud in order to figure out, like, oh, I think I've cracked the code. All right, guys, later.